Here's a quick thought on two of the biggest decisions you'll ever make in your life. The first is committing your life to Christ. And the second biggest decision is then choosing who to marry. And I promise you, if you allow the first decision of following Christ to inform and dictate who you date, how you date, and who you choose to ultimately marry, then you will end up with an incredible, adventurous, God-honoring marriage. Have you ever noticed that in culture, the way people talk about marriage is as if it's the place where fun, romance, and adventure go to die? When people are like, no, I'm not ready to get married just yet. I still want to go have some fun and adventure. I still want to play and explore. There's so much I want to do, before I settle down, before I get tied down, before I get the old ball and chain. Sounds awful. But from a biblical worldview, marriage is the place where fun, romance, and adventure come alive. Imagine the time you can have with a spouse playing and adventuring by seeing people impacted for the kingdom of God, healing the sick and teaching them about Christ, seeing addictions drop off in the name of Christ, seeing the widows and the orphans taken care of, seeing the hungry being fed, the poor being clothed, and seeing people regularly brought to Jesus Christ. That's fun and adventure. You know what messaging I keep hearing married people give to single people is when they say, you know what, marriage is hard, but it's worth it. And they say it in this way where it's like, I'm not even sure, are you for marriage or are you against marriage? Because that is terrible messaging. I went by a recent billboard for crypto that said, fortune favors the brave. And I'm thinking, how does crypto have better marketing than marriage does? Because here's the reality is when people say marriage is hard, but it's worth it, it's not true. Is that marriage isn't necessarily hard. You know what's hard? Life. And when you choose to get married, life may get harder, but that's simply because you're aspiring to do more. I mean, think about it. Try having children, raising a family, coaching Little League, mastering a career, joining the PTA, and buying a minivan that's less than a decade old. That's what's hard. So here's a final message from your friend at marriage, which is that your spiritual fortune favors the brave. Here's a quick truth for you. The devil is okay with you reading the 1 Corinthians love verses at your wedding as long as you don't have it in your marriage. Think about that. 1 Corinthians love verses. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not jealous, boastful, proud, or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable. It keeps no record of being wronged. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures in every circumstance. Think about that. If we were able to carry those verses into our marriage and not just leave them at the wedding, because the enemy is okay with you reading them at your wedding. In fact, you can read them twice. You could read it again at the reception, as long as you don't carry it into your marriage. So let's be these dynamite kingdom couples that carry the 1 Corinthians love verses straight into marriage. Let's be as adamant about having it in our marriage as we were about having it read at our wedding. And that becomes a spiritual game changer. The other day I heard somebody trying to make a case for not getting married by using this analogy, taking the roughly estimated 50% of divorces in marriage, and then taking that and comparing it to being at an airport terminal where you're about to step onto a flight and somebody tells you that 50% of these flights end in a crash. They're saying, if that were the case, why would I ever step foot on that flight, on that plane? And then they were using that as if to say, why would I ever step foot in marriage if 50% of those go down? Well, this is a faulty analogy because it's not the institution of marriage itself that causes a 50% divorce rate. It's the two people within it, their sin, their brokenness, their baggage, their insecurities, that's what gets in the way and causes the marriage to fail. And it would be the same thing if you go back to that airport terminal and they told you 50% of those flights are crashing, but then you look into it a little more closely and you realize that there's nothing wrong with the plane. It's actually the pilots. These pilots are bringing so much of their baggage into the cockpit that they can't possibly see clearly and navigate this plane. And so they're the ones that keep crashing it.